I shouldn't have noticed her the way I did. But the truth is, it was impossible not to. She wasn't doing anything unusual, just leaning against the kitchen counter, one hand around a half-empty glass of wine, the other brushing a strand of dark hair from her cheek. Still, there was something about the way the late light caught her profile, softening the edges of her face, making her seem both untouchable and unbearably near. She was twice my age, almost. She carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that made people pause before speaking, as though their words might not measure up. I had told myself 100 times not to look too long, not to let my thoughts wander. But in the stillness of that room, every glance stretched out, every silence filled with things I couldn't say. "Why are you so quiet tonight?" she asked suddenly, her voice low, almost teasing. I shrugged, though it wasn't shyness. It was caution. "You talk enough for both of us." She smiled at that, a slow, deliberate curve of her lips. "Do I?" Her glass tilted in her hand, catching the light. I watched her fingers tighten around the stem, elegant, steady, the way someone might hold on to more than just a drink. The air between us felt heavier than the conversation. She shifted closer to set the glass down, and in the small motion her sleeve brushed my arm. Barely a touch, but enough to make me still. I think she noticed, because she didn't move away right away. Her body remained angled toward mine, close enough that I could catch the faint warmth of her perfume, something subtle, woodsy, not the kind of sweetness you notice in passing. I forced myself to look at the countertop instead. At the thin ring of condensation her glass had left behind. At anything but her. "You avoid looking at me when we're alone," she said, and the words landed heavier than I expected. I glanced up. "That's not true." Her eyes lingered on mine longer than was safe. The silence hummed like a wire pulled too tight. I wanted to break it, but she looked at me as though she already knew what I wouldn't admit. "You think you hide it," she murmured, her voice dropping, softer than before. I swallowed, unsure if I should laugh it off, change the subject, step away. But none of those options seemed possible with her standing there, so close. Her hand moved again, this time resting casually on the edge of the counter, casual only in appearance. Her little finger brushed mine, almost by accident, almost not. I stayed perfectly still. My breath slowed, even as my chest tightened. The kitchen felt too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the wall clock, each sound only made the space between us sharper. She tilted her head, studying me, her expression caught between amusement and something heavier. And then, barely audible, but deliberate enough that I couldn't mistake it, she said, "Don't pretend you haven't thought about this too." The words caught me off guard, though maybe they shouldn't have. I opened my mouth to answer, but the moment was cut short. A knock at the front door. Sharp, unexpected, loud enough to scatter the spell of silence we had been wrapped in. Her eyes flicked toward the sound, but only for a moment. Then they returned to me, steady, unreadable, waiting. I didn't move. Neither did she. The knock came again. And the air between us stayed charged, unfinished. The knock at the door went unanswered. Neither of us moved to open it. When the sound finally faded, she picked up her glass again, though she didn't drink. She only traced the rim with her finger, her eyes still on me as if nothing had interrupted us at all. "You're too young to look so serious all the time," she said, almost lightly. I gave a half-smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "And you're too smart to think age has anything to do with it." That earned me a quiet laugh, the kind that escaped before she could stop it. She shook her head and turned away, but not before I caught the faintest trace of color in her cheeks. She tried to busy herself, rinsing her glass in the sink, though the water ran longer than it needed to. Maybe she thought the sound would soften the silence between us. It didn't. I leaned against the counter, watching the curve of her shoulders as she moved. She had that practiced grace of someone who'd been alone for a long time, self-contained, deliberate, as if relying on herself had become second nature. I'd heard things in passing, fragments from neighbors, a slip of detail in conversation. A marriage that ended quietly. A child grown and gone. A house that stayed too quiet most nights. She never spoke about any of it directly, but loneliness has a way of leaving fingerprints on a person, even when they try to hide it. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she said suddenly, her back still to me. I blinked. "Like what?" She shut off the water, set the glass down with too much care, then finally turned back around. "Like you see me." The words hung heavy, too intimate for the space we were standing in. "I do see you," I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes searched mine, and for a second, I thought she might close the distance between us. Instead, she stepped past me, close enough that her sleeve brushed my arm again. It wasn't an accident this time. I could tell by the way she lingered, by the faint catch of her breath as she passed. I stayed frozen, caught between wanting to reach for her and knowing I shouldn't. The age difference wasn't just numbers. It was years of lived experience, of stories she carried that I couldn't yet imagine. It was the way people would talk if they saw us like this. It was the way she sometimes looked at me, as though she wanted to lean in but already regretted it before she even moved. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly, not sure what I even meant until the words were already out. Her steps slowed. She glanced back over her shoulder. "Regret what?" "Keeping people at a distance." The question seemed to strike something in her. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she came back to the counter, leaning against it the way she had earlier, her arms crossed. "Regret is tricky," she said finally. "Sometimes you think you're protecting yourself. Other times, you realize you're just building walls no one will bother to climb." She didn't look at me as she said it, but her voice softened on the last part, almost as if she wished she hadn't admitted it out loud. I moved closer, not enough to crowd her, just enough that the warmth of her body seemed to reach across the small space between us. Her arms loosened. She didn't step away. For a moment, the only sound was the slow rhythm of our breathing. Then, as if she couldn't help it, her hand lifted, brushing against my shoulder. The touch was light, barely there, but it burned like something I'd remember long after. "You shouldn't," she whispered, though her hand didn't move. "Neither should you," I murmured back. Her fingers lingered a beat longer before she pulled away. Not completely, just far enough to pretend the contact hadn't mattered. But the pause that followed was charged, alive with everything we hadn't said. When she finally looked at me again, her eyes held something unguarded, something that slipped through the careful composure she wore like armor. And for the first time, I didn't look away. The house was too quiet again. After that touch, neither of us dared say much, but silence had never felt so loud. I sat on the edge of the couch, my palms pressed to my knees. She paced a little, not fast, but with that restless energy of someone trying to convince herself she was in control. Her arms crossed, then uncrossed. She smoothed her sleeve though it didn't need fixing. Every movement made me want to reach for her, but I stayed still. "You should probably go," she said at last. The words were steady, but her voice caught at the end. I leaned forward slightly. "Do you want me to?" Her lips parted, as if the answer was there, waiting. But before she could give it, her phone buzzed on the counter. The sound startled us both. She turned away too quickly, picking it up like the interruption had saved her. A message lit the screen. I couldn't see from where, but the way she froze told me enough. Her thumb hovered. She didn't type anything back. "Everything okay?" I asked. She slipped the phone face down. "It's nothing." I didn't push. I just watched the way her shoulders tensed, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. It was a reminder, this wasn't simple. Whatever was between us carried weight she wasn't ready to share. When she finally moved back toward me, the air shifted again. She sank onto the couch beside me, not close, but closer than she needed to. The cushion dipped under her weight, and the faint brush of her leg against mine sent my pulse racing. I didn't lean away, and neither did she. Her hand rested on the couch, inches from mine. Too close to ignore. Too far to claim. I glanced at her, and she was already looking at me. Her eyes flicked down, first to my mouth, then quickly back up. The room shrank. Every second stretched thin, fragile, like if I spoke too loud it would all shatter. I turned slightly toward her, just enough that my knee brushed hers. She didn't move. Her breath quickened. I could feel the warmth of it when she whispered, "We can't." But the way she said it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a confession. I leaned in, slow enough that she could stop me, close enough that the space between us felt electric. Our foreheads almost touched. Her hand lifted as if to push me back, yet instead, her fingers hovered near my jaw, trembling, undecided. We didn't kiss. We didn't break apart. We just stayed there, suspended in the gravity of something neither of us was ready to name. Then, footsteps outside. The front gate clattered, a voice called faintly, someone passing, too close, too casual. We both froze. Her hand fell away, and she pulled back, not far, but enough. "Do you see?" she whispered, as though the footsteps proved her point. But her eyes betrayed her. They lingered soft, searching, as though she hated the distance as much as I did. I nodded, though my voice failed me. I should have stood, left, put space between us. Instead, I stayed where I was, close enough to feel the heat of her body against mine. She didn't move either. And somehow, in resisting, we only drew closer, two people bound tighter by the very thing we tried to deny. The quiet between us wasn't safe anymore. It had shifted, thickened, until every glance, every brush of her sleeve, felt like stepping into a storm we couldn't walk back from. She was the first to move. She stood, pacing toward the window as though distance might undo what had just nearly happened. "You don't understand what this would mean," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands gave her away. She gripped the curtain's edge too tightly, knuckles pale. I rose too, though I kept my voice low. "Then explain it." Her laugh was short, bitter. "People already talk. About me. About my choices. You think they wouldn't notice if I—" She cut herself off, pressing her lips together hard. I stepped closer, slowly, until I was standing just behind her. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from her body, not close enough to touch. "It's not about them." Her shoulders tensed. "It has to be." I let the silence stretch. Then, before I could think better of it, I lifted a hand, hesitant, careful, and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. My fingers barely grazed her skin, but she shivered at the contact. "You shouldn't," she whispered, eyes closing for just a second too long. "But you don't pull away," I said. My voice was closer now, near her ear. She inhaled sharply, her chest rising, her back almost leaning against me before she stopped herself. "I've spent years keeping people at a distance," she said, her words quick, breathless. "Because it's easier. Because wanting leads to disappointment. Or it leads to something real," I countered. Her head tilted slightly, almost unconsciously, like she wanted to lean back into me. The scent of her perfume was faint but dizzying, something woodsy and warm that wrapped around my senses. I dared to rest my hand against the curve of her arm. Not pulling, just grounding. Her skin was warm under the thin fabric, and I felt her body stiffen, then soften. "I shouldn't want this," she murmured, almost to herself. I swallowed, my voice low. "Then why do you?" That broke something in her. She turned suddenly, and in the small space between us, our faces nearly collided. Her breath hit mine, sharp and unsteady. Her hand pressed against my chest, not pushing me away, not pulling me closer, just there. Her eyes searched mine, wild with a mixture of defiance and fear. "Because you make me feel seen," she said. Neither of us moved to answer it. She didn't look away from me this time. Her hand still gripped my shirt, her lips still hovered so close I could feel the warmth of them. She whispered, her voice breaking between a plea and a dare. "If I don't stop this now, I won't stop at all." Her phone kept ringing. She let it buzz across the counter, her hand still gripping my shirt like she couldn't let go. When it finally went silent, she exhaled, shaky, and stepped back just enough to put a breath of space between us. "I can't do this," she said. but her eyes betrayed her. They lingered on my mouth, then darted away. "You already are," I said quietly. Her hand trembled as she reached for the phone, maybe out of habit, maybe for an excuse. But when she glanced at the screen, her whole body went still. She set it down face up this time, not bothering to hide it. The name flashed clear. Her ex-husband. I hadn't expected the jolt of jealousy that hit me. My chest tightened, heat rushed to my face. "You still talk to him?" Her jaw clenched. "He doesn't get to stop calling just because I don't pick up." I shouldn't have asked. But the question was already spilling out. "Do you want to?" That made her turn sharply, her eyes blazing. Don't make this about something it isn't." I flinched, not at her anger, but at the hurt behind it. She brushed past me, too close, her shoulder grazing mine as she moved toward the sink. The air shifted with her, perfume, warmth, the faint tremor of her hand as she set the glass down harder than she meant to. I stayed where I was, pulse hammering, torn between giving her distance and refusing to let the moment dissolve. "You think this is easy for me?" she asked, her back to me. Her voice cracked, then steadied. "You think I don't know how this looks? You barely starting your life. Me, already known for my mistakes." I took a step toward her. "I don't care what it looks like." She spun around at that, eyes glistening with something between fury and longing. "Well, I do. Because people already think they know who I am. Because every glance, every whisper, would say I'm desperate. Or worse, reckless." Her words stung, not because of what she said, but because I saw how much she believed them. And yet, her hands gripped the counter like she needed to hold herself back. Her chest rose too quickly. Her lips trembled as if she was holding in something louder than her words. I closed the last step between us, slow, careful, until I could feel the heat of her body. I didn't touch her, not yet, but I lowered my voice until it was barely a breath against her ear. "Reckless isn't the word I'd use." She shivered, her eyes fluttering shut for half a second before snapping open again. "You don't understand." "Then tell me," I whispered. Her hands finally let go of the counter. They hovered in the space between us, uncertain. She looked at me as though 1,000 things were fighting inside her, fear, longing, regret. And then the truth came out, raw and unguarded. "I'm terrified that if I let you in, you'll see what everyone else eventually does. And you'll leave too." The words broke something open in me. All the restraint I'd been holding on to slipped. I lifted a hand slowly, brushing my fingers against her cheek. She didn't pull away this time. Her skin was warm, soft, trembling under my touch. Her breath hitched, and she leaned, just barely, into my palm. I could feel the moment tipping, fragile and irreversible. "Look at me," I said, my voice shaking. "Do I look like I'm going anywhere?" Her lips parted, and for a breathless second she believed me. I saw it, the guards slipping, the wall cracking. Her forehead leaned the slightest inch toward mine. And then, she stepped back. Not far, but enough to pull the air out of my lungs. Her eyes held mine, fierce and aching. "If we do this, everything changes." I nodded. My hand was still half raised, empty without her. "Then maybe it's time." The silence stretched, heavy, unbreakable. She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. The room felt smaller than ever. Her words, "If we do this, everything changes," still hung in the air, sharp as glass. I didn't move at first. I was afraid that if I did, I'd break the fragile balance we were standing on. But then she shifted, just slightly, one step closer, and the decision was made before either of us admitted it. Her hand lifted, hovering near my chest again. She didn't touch, not yet, but the tremor in her fingers betrayed her. "We shouldn't," she whispered. I leaned down, close enough that my breath stirred the hair near her ear. "Then tell me to go." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She stayed there, caught in the space between resistance and surrender. I raised my hand, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. My thumb lingered against her temple, my palm cupping her face. She closed her eyes, leaning into it as though she'd been waiting too long to be touched this way. Her body swayed forward, unsteady, until the distance between us was almost gone. "People will talk," she murmured, her voice shaky. "Let them." My forehead rested gently against hers. "I only care about what you say." She inhaled sharply, the sound trembling between us. Her hands finally closed the gap, gripping the fabric of my shirt as though to anchor herself. I felt her warmth through the thin barrier, every line of her body drawn toward mine despite her words. The silence pulsed. My heart pounded against her hands. I knew she could feel it. And then, her lips brushed mine. Not a kiss, not fully, just the faintest contact. A hesitation turned real. She pulled back half an inch, eyes wide, breath ragged. "This is madness." "Maybe," I whispered. "But it's ours." That was all it took. The restraint we'd both carried shattered in the space of a breath. She leaned in, closing the distance this time with certainty, her lips pressing against mine, soft and desperate all at once. The kiss wasn't perfect, it was messy, trembling, too full of everything we'd been holding back. Her hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me closer as though she feared I'd disappear. My arms circled her instinctively, holding her as though I'd been waiting my whole life to. When we finally broke apart, it wasn't with relief but with need still thick in the air. Her forehead rested against mine, her eyes closed, her breath uneven. "I shouldn't have let that happen," she said, though her voice carried no conviction. "You don't regret it." Her silence was answer enough. Her hands still clutched at my shirt, refusing to let go. I pulled back just enough to see her face. There it was, the raw truth, stripped of all the walls and fears. Loneliness, longing, defiance, all tangled together. For the first time, I think we both understood, this wasn't about filling a void, or proving something, or rebelling against what others thought. It was about being seen. About being wanted in a way that felt undeniable. She looked at me, steady now, her voice low. "If we keep going, there's no turning back." I nodded. My hand tightened gently around hers. "Then let's not turn back." The quiet that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was full, charged with the clarity of what we'd chosen. We stood there, closer than ever, nothing left between us but truth. And for the first time, either of us tried to resist. The house was quiet again, but it no longer felt suffocating. We sat on the couch, side by side, our knees touching. The storm of what had just happened still hung in the air, but neither of us seemed willing to move away from it. She leaned back, exhaling slowly, as though she'd been holding her breath for years. Her hand rested on her lap, uncertain, until I reached for it. Our fingers brushed, then laced together. Her grip tightened, not tentative this time, but steady. For a long while, we didn't speak. The silence was different now, no longer heavy, but full. Like the room had finally let us breathe. "You'll regret this," she said eventually, her voice quiet, though there was no fight in it. I turned toward her. "Do I look like I do?" Her lips curved, faint but real. "Not yet." I studied her face in the soft lamplight, the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the way her hair fell loose now, unguarded. She looked tired, yes, but also lighter. Beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. I reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. This time, she didn't flinch. She leaned into my touch instead, closing her eyes for a moment, as if memorizing it. "I've spent so long worrying about what people think," she admitted. "Maybe I forgot to ask myself what I want." "And what do you want?" I asked. Her eyes opened, meeting mine. She didn't hesitate this time. "This." Her hand squeezed mine. Simple, steady, undeniable. I smiled, though my throat tightened. "Good. Because so do I." We sat closer after that, our shoulders pressed together. Her head tipped lightly against my shoulder, and I felt the weight of it, gentle, grounding, real. I shifted just enough to kiss the top of her hair, a soft press that said more than words could manage. Her breath caught, but she didn't move. She only nestled closer, our hands still tangled, her thumb tracing slow circles against my skin. "I don't know where this goes," she said after a while, her voice muffled against me. "But I don't want to lose it before it begins." "You won't," I said, with more certainty than I felt, but certainty enough for her to believe me. We stayed like that, wrapped in the warmth of each other, until the tension that had held us apart for so long finally eased. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't polished. But it was real, two people who'd stopped pretending, choosing each other despite everything. And in that quiet, in her leaning against me, in our fingers locked tight, there was clarity. We weren't running anymore. We were together.